I grew up in a house that, it was 7 children, a military father. So clearly lots and lots of discretionary cash was not out there. But I also grew up knowing that when they wanted to build a church in our area, my father was making sure that whatever it was as a pledge, we were contributing to that. I grew up in a family where volunteering was something you saw all the time. Being part of a nonprofit, being part of whether that was religious or civic or whatever it was, I watched volunteering all the time. And it was a volunteer going back into high school. In fact, as a senior, I chaired the high school's volunteer efforts to get not only seniors, but all high school students into volunteer activities. Now, I thought that was a really nice thing I did on my sidelight. It was not something I thought I was going to do for a living. I guess I just didn't realize how much it was taking hold. No, I thought it was going to be something very different. I thought I might, I taught to repay my debt to the state of Virginia, and then I took off thinking maybe it would be arts or whatever, administration. I had to work in order to get an advanced degree, and that's the day I showed up at the Council on Foundations and saw what was going on there. I can't believe I took that job. Within 10 minutes of being offered that job, I had been offered one that was in my field where I'd been teaching. It was better pay, it was a better title, and there was just something about it that didn't feel right. Well, I've been in the field since 1980. I started at the Council on Foundations not long after it had moved from New York, and was really still in many ways unpacking boxes and trying to organize itself. And in those very, very first days of my work there, discovered the file cabinets on what was then called area associations. And my boss, Charles Rooks, who had once been the president of the Southeastern Council, suggested that might be something. Well, he didn't suggest it. I suggested that no one was paying attention to it. And he said, yeah, that would be a good thing to do. So I was actually the first staff person ever for area associations. And 3 months into my tenure, had my first committee meeting with all of them. That was back when every CEO was a member of the committee, and Dottie was one of those. So that was the beginning. I went on to work in grantmaker education, which brought me in contact with a lot of folks, including the 1982 Detroit conference. In the course of that work, began working with family philanthropy, and then ultimately working to establish the National Center for Family Philanthropy. There have been a lot more intersections with the Johnson Center and being part of Dottie's farewell dinner and all of that sort of thing. But I guess there's in terms of tenure and intersections, a lot of points of contact with Michigan. Felt like I needed to go to the council work. And I thought I was going there for a couple of years. And every time it seemed like I was, had explored what I needed to, Jim Joseph or Alice Buell would find something else that they thought I might do, or I would find something and I thought it could be helpful to the field. And as a young person, I couldn't get over the people I was meeting and working with. In addition to Bill and those phone calls, you'd be calling Jean Fairfax or Maggie Mahoney. And these people were incredibly invested in the field and in helping me. And so I was sitting in a first-class philanthropic education, just in the position I was. And then when I took over education, Jim wanted to make sure that I had a mentor in that work, and he brought Paul in as the special consultant to education. And so for 10 years, there was Paul, as in addition to all these other wonderful volunteers moving in and out. And I think the passion for the work was just infectious. The notion that this work could be supported in ways that I thought were intriguing and excited, and that I was sort of an instrument of all these committees. I used to wonder why people thought this was me, because I saw myself as just facilitating all these wonderful committees to do what they wanted to do for the field. So I think that sense of energy I got from them, that sense of being able to make those visions, at least in part, happen, was very, very important to me. It clearly became something I deeply valued, not just a job. And when I discovered in the mid-1980s these families where the donor or members of the donor's family were still involved in the giving, I couldn't help but wonder why this wasn't a bigger part of the way we do our work. And I know that some people who still felt that, the Tax Reform Act and the regulations and all of this stuff, we have to be very professional. We have to show that, we have processes, we have forms. We're very nervous about bringing in this very personal aspect of the donor and the family into the process, where I found it incredibly invigorating. It's where it starts. And even the independent foundations started with someone making a gift. Even community foundations were networks of donors trying to enhance their communities. So this became something that sort of brought together how much I valued family with how much I'd come to care about the field and the practice of philanthropy. It was like the perfect coming together. Now, it was not a perfect experience. As I said, there were a lot of politics. There was a lot of anxiety. But for every bit of that I experienced all these families who just were so thrilled that someone cared about their experience and wanted to make it even better, that someone wanted to look at the collective experience and figure out how that could help move a field. Not because I wanted it to move in a specific way, but again, go back to the facilitator. I realized that the concept needed to be there for a truly collaborative organization, one that could enhance a lot of organizations that touched on the lives of donor families. I realized I had a lot of experience to do that. I'd been working with associations. I'd been working with committees. I knew that you were going to have credibility in the field if you were going to be advancing an idea that not everyone embraced. And I realized I had the background for it. But even then, I didn't think about doing the CEO work. I did all the concept papers, the focus groups, the individual interviews. I went to the funder meeting and, did everything I could, thinking only toward the end, gee, I might have to ask these people for a job. This is really going to be terrific. And it was very, very funny because when I was going to be an arts administrator, I realized that I didn't probably want to be an arts administrator because I didn't want to run anything. I didn't want to raise money, and I didn't want to do public speaking. And here I was thinking about this work and thinking, you're going to have to do all three of those. What I had to realize, first of all, is that my committee who had been helping me think about the center told me that I was the only one who didn't think I should be its president. And then I realized that all those three things I was going to have to do and I didn't want to do for the arts administration, I had found work that was important enough to me that I was willing to do those other three things. Taking on those jobs was a way to help advance this idea. And again, with a lot of good volunteers, a lot of great coworkers and things like that, ultimate facilitator. But you can raise money, you can do public speaking, and you can run something if it's something you care deeply about. So even when younger people ask me, or I get invited to the emerging practitioners in philanthropy, because I'm not emerging anymore, I tell them it is something. Ultimately, you're going to face things that are difficult. You're going to have opportunities that are new. You're going to have days when you wonder, if you can, get this through. What's going to sustain you? It's not going to be a paycheck or a title. It's what's going to sustain you is the fact that you absolutely care about this work happening. And I think where I've been enormously lucky is I was able to put a sort of body of experience behind something I could care deeply about. And that is a gift, and I don't take it lightly at all. But my journey has been one of appreciating those gifts. And whether it was the Dottie or the Paul or the Alice, whether it was the opportunity to have, to be at the table with all these wonderful thinkers in different committees, whether it was the gift of all these families who tell me their most heartfelt and sometimes painful experiences because they think I can do something good with it. This has been nothing but gifts. And I think appreciating that sort of gets you out of bed in the morning and says, this is where I want to be.